Okay. Anybody have any idea what, and please feel free to just jump in. I'm not asking anybody to raise their hand or anything. Any idea what that number represents? Anyone want to take a guess? It's the average number of items that we each have in our homes. That's a lot of items, right? And this number here represents the number of actual storage facilities, not units, like individual units, but actual storage facilities that we have in our country, and it grows every day. That's more than the number of Starbucks and McDonald's that we have. So that's a lot of storage facilities, and then you multiply it by the number of actual individual units. That means we are a country, obviously, that consumes a lot of items, and then we don't know what to do with them. And when you add into it that you have ADD or you're neurodiverse, it just makes it that much harder. So again, my job is to come in and see what of those 300,000 items you might have, what is it that really matters, that's really important to you? So that gets asked the question, what is chronic disorganization? I don't know what it looks like to any of you because I'm not in your home right now, but I saw this meme a little while ago and I thought it was just so funny because I do have probably a dozen chapsticks that are in so many different places and they're never where I need them to be. But I learned a little hack for myself where I make sure that I wear leggings that have pockets. So I make sure every morning there's a chapstick that sits right on my table that I walk by when I leave the house, and it goes right into my pants pocket. That's my little trick. That's my little hack that I do for myself. It's the only way that I make sure there's at least one chapstick with me on a daily basis. We live in Colorado. We need chapstick, right? But you could apply this to any item. You could apply it even, where are my keys? Where's my wallet? Where's my phone? We have to have a landing pad for everything that we need to know where it is on a daily basis. I am really unfortunately well known for leaving a water bottle in practically every client's home that I go into. And that is simply because I am so hyper focused on my clients that I'm not paying attention to where I put anything down. And that doesn't bode well for me as a professional organizer, but that just goes to show how easy it is for anybody to get distracted and lose track of things. At Red Rocks last night, I left my water bottle and my friend picked it up, grabbed it, and as I was walking out of the arena, she's like, "Hey, you missing anything?" And I'm like, "I'm sure I'm missing something, and you have it, right?" And sure enough, she did. So anyway, why does chronic disorganization happen? We all know the reasons: executive dysfunction, sensory sensitivities. Why is my thing not working? Time blindness, emotional attachment to objects, and overwhelm from just trying to do those multiple steps. Does anybody have any questions about any of these bullet points? Like, do you not know what any of it means? Time blindness. You're welcome to speak out loud if not. I'm just trying to go through this as quickly as possible. So we really what this is all about is reframing your thinking and creating better habits. I don't know if anybody's ever heard the gentleman that was in the military, and he gave a commencement speech at the University of Texas about 10, 15 years ago about the importance of making your bed. And I don't know if you all think this is important, but one thing I always did as a kid, and I didn't know why it was so important at the time, is that I made my bed every morning before I left my bedroom, before I went to the bathroom, before I brushed my teeth. My parents never had to tell me to do it. I didn't understand why, because again, back then, especially girls were not being diagnosed with ADD. I knew though that it was really important to being able to set myself up for success for the day, not ever knowing that that was a thing. I just knew it in my gut that it felt better for me to make my bed. And in general, it always felt better for me to be able to find things and have a place for everything. And I overcompensated for many, many, many years and came up with lots of coping mechanisms. But then as I started to age, that took over for my, some of my executive functioning. And that was when I was first diagnosed with ADD. And it makes sense now why it was so important to me to have a place for everything, but I didn't know why. And now I do, because there's science behind it. My brain likes order. It likes to know where things are. And a lot of people for many years just attributed that to being OCD, and that's not what I was. So it really is about reframing your thinking when you're going to start to think about how you're going to organize things moving forward. And that means developing a shame-free mindset. I never want any of my clients to ever feel like I'm shaming them or judging them. And you shouldn't do that to yourself. Just because you didn't get something done, you gotta think about a way of reframing how you actually organize your thoughts and your tasks for the day. There's lots of productivity apps out there, and we can get into that in a minute, but some of those don't work. So because usually it comes down to you've shamed yourself and you've judged yourself to the point where you're paralyzed and you can't do anything. And that leads into the idea of you want to always think about how can you move forward, but not try and be perfect. One of the things that I hear from my clients a lot is that they look at social media and they see all these social media influencers telling them how something should look or how they should do something. And then they get into this perfection mindset. And I think that was where I was until I was diagnosed with AD. I thought that I had to do it because that is what our society tells us we're supposed to think and feel. But we should be doing the opposite. We should be thinking about what works best for us and not think about what society thinks is perfection. And that leads into we're not broken. It's just needing systems. And I created those really good systems for myself without knowing that I needed to. And again, systems look different for every single person. Can you get some general ideas from, scrolling through social media? Sure. Will you sometimes go down that social media distraction rabbit hole? Probably. So again, that's where talking to somebody who's already done this for hundreds of people through the years can save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration and a lot of money, because a lot of people go out and just buy things and think, okay, well, this is my answer, but it may not be. A lot of times you have to go through the decluttering process before you can even begin any type of organizing process again. So I really recommend to most of my clients that you break all of your little tasks down throughout the day. And if you're going to go through any type of decluttering process, break it down by cabinet, by drawer, by closet. You don't have to tackle a whole room in one fell swoop. You can do it just one section of a closet. Do just your shoes maybe, or just the pile of paper that's on your desk if you don't like piles. Think about what is most important to you to keep as paper versus how much you can store electronically these days. But if you're going to store things electronically, you need to know how you've stored them and where you've stored them. And that can become really tripping for a lot of people. So again, it goes back to how do you think you individually can handle things moving forward? Is it best for you to write a list and actually walk around with that list? I've got something called a Rocket Book that I love because it's a dry erase book, and I can scan the page and upload it to a Google Doc, and then it gets transcribed into words that I can actually put into my clients' files. I love that. It might be a couple of extra steps, but I love it for me because it reinforces over and over again who that person is and what their needs are. That works for me. If just keeping a notebook in your car works for you, if Post-its everywhere works for you, great. One of the things that I also do is I seem to like dry erase markers and systems, because on my bathroom mirror, I have a hashtag that says, and hopefully nobody's offended by this, but it says, remember, God damn it all, because my father, my entire life, whenever he like gets angry or frustrated by something, he'll say, God damn it all. And so that's a trigger for me. And it may not be a happy trigger, but it is a forces me into action kind of trigger, because I don't want to feel that kind of icky feeling that I get when I haven't completed a task. And that icky feeling that I used to get when my father would say, or when he would say, God damn it all, is obviously a trigger to, move me forward. Might not work for all of you, but it works for me. But it is really important, again, to know what your style is. Do you like writing lists? And if so, are you better with it in a notebook versus electronically on your phone? I'm not some, I have reminders on my phone, but I also have written lists, because I find a lot of times I'll push the reminders on my phone to the next day and the next day and the next day, and then I never end up doing it. So it's really important to know whether or not you would succeed using electronic reminders versus something that's writing down. I know a lot of people like writing the list of things as they check them off, as opposed to the list before, like the actual list of items, and then they can cross it off. They'd rather write down, well, this is what I already accomplished today, and then feel better as the list grows throughout the day. So again, it's really up to you what works best for you. For some people, doing some of these time tracking kind of processes, like has anybody ever heard of the Pomodoro technique? Yeah. Does it work for you? I saw Mildred, you were shaking your head. Sometimes, yeah. And I would say that's okay, because sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. Again, I'm somebody who hyper focuses, and I can hyper focus forever. Like I can completely lose track of time. I have time blindness unless I set up alarms on my phone. Like even to come on to this presentation, I had to set up 3 alarms, just because I wanted to make sure I was really staying on task, what I needed to do prior to the presentation. I'll be really honest, this presentation was not something that I really put together until this morning, because I had a lot going on in the last week and I was distracted. I was distracted by what happened on Pearl Street a week ago. I happen to be Jewish, and I was very engaged in the conversation all last week. Could I have beaten myself up over the fact that I should have done this presentation before this morning? Sure. But was that going to be at all productive? No. So again, we all have to find what it is that's going to motivate us, to move us forward, to keep us on task. And if something like the Pomodoro technique works for you, great.
Can you just explain what it is? Because we
Sure.
can't read that on the slide. It's really tiny.
Sure. What it is you set a timer, 20 to 25 minutes, and stay focused. Do a task that you can hopefully do in those 20 to 25 minutes, or a task that you can step away from and easily step back into. Set the timer for 20 minutes, and then set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes to walk away. You can have a snack. You should drink water. You can do some jumping jacks, anything other than what you were previously focusing on, because your brain needs that little break. For my kids, when they were in school, one of the cool things that I thought that they did for the kids was force them to do a brain break every 90 minutes. And sometimes it was as simple as everybody in the classroom doing one of those cross lateral movements, which, I'll talk about it in a few minutes. Anything that's going to break you away from that heavy focus, but still give you the motivation to go back to it. Does that help, Adrian? I can't hear you. Adrian? Yes?
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I thought you could see me. Yes.
No, sorry. Well, I can see you, but I couldn't hear you. But it does improve focus. It reduces the amount of distractions that you feel you need to take. I mean, if going onto Facebook for that break is the distraction you need, do it. But make sure you're setting the timer to go back to your task. It prevents burnout. It does enhance productivity, and it helps you track your progress. It really, really does. Any questions about that still? No? Okay. Use external supports whenever you can. One of the things that I did when I was initially diagnosed, because I really wanted to make sure I was practicing what I was going to be preaching to people. I had a friend who actually was the one that suggested that I had ADD, recommend that we started out doing like body doubling kind of sessions together, where or parallel play, the kind of parallel play thing, because even though we weren't doing the same work, we were at least in the same room, and we were holding each other accountable to staying focused for those 20 to 30-minute stretches of time. So it really is like having a play date with somebody. And, you can do your little brain breaks together too, which is kind of fun. We did, when I worked at a camp several summers ago, which is how I ended up moving to Colorado, every afternoon after lunch, myself and the communications director at the camp, we did what I think it was called the 7-minute workout. And we did it every day without fail. So, whatever it is that helps you stay, go back to being focused and being productive, do it. For an external support, I put in the Container Store. I swear to God, it is my happy place. I walk in there for inspiration, not even necessarily to buy things for clients, because they're constantly getting new products. If you can do that online without getting too distracted and going down that, Amazon organizing solutions rabbit hole, great. But, there are, I like the Container Store because it's contained. And I like walking in there because it's a contained space. If I go online, I get too distracted. But you can go in there and you can ask their staff for suggestions, explain to them, bring in pictures, take a video. You can always call me and ask me questions about any type of organizing solutions that you think would be helpful. But don't get into the trap of buying things until you've really done some decluttering. And you should be doing decluttering on a regular basis, not just big, massive declutterings that people hire me for. Do that little bit of editing I do it practically every day. And by editing, I mean, when I walk in the house, if there are things that I haven't put away for the day, I go in and put them away. And if I see something that I'm like, oh, I haven't used that in a while, I immediately put it into the pile, the bag, the box, whatever it's going to be, that I'm then going to carry out of my house the next day and drop it off at whatever donation center, or, maybe somebody has indicated that they want it. I really highly recommend that when you do see those things, get it out of the house as quickly as possible, even if it means it just sits in your car for a week or two. But, we all pass by those donation centers, or put it online onto Facebook, onto one of the buy free pages, ask your friends, whatever you can do to remove that stuff as quickly as possible. I use Google Suite for practically all of my well, that's not true. I do have a CRM that I use for all of my clients, but I use Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Gmail, Google Contacts, even my messages I do on my, when I'm not on my phone, I can reply to text messages through Google. I'm just a big believer in sticking to one suite. So if you're a Google person, use Google. If you're an Apple person, use Apple. My computers are getting very confused because I have an iPad that my son gave me, so that I don't always have to take my computer with me wherever I go. And my computer and my phone are, because I'm a Samsung Android person and PC, they're constantly getting confused now, and it's driving me crazy. So try and stick to one system as much as you possibly can. Productivity apps, again, they can be your best friend if you use them properly, or they can be your worst enemy, because we all do, like, look at those apps and think, oh, I'll download that and I'll use it. I have a Pilates app on my phone that I downloaded 6 months ago, and I have a reminder that comes up every day. I can count on one hand the number of times that I've used it. It needs to come off my phone. I love Pilates. It's not, and I'm not a lazy person. It's just, why am I taking up space on my phone for something that I'm not really using? And you don't need to be a better planner necessarily. You just need to do better prompts for yourself. And I put in here AI maybe to the rescue. I don't know how you all feel about AI, but I am not somebody who really is embracing it. I did actually put in a prompt to create like a kind of very generic outline for this presentation. And then I looked at what it spit out and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't even sound like me. So be very careful if you do use AI to prompt you to do certain things. You can get as detailed as possible. I don't know if any of you have even considered AI as a way to organize things better for yourself and create those to-do lists, but you have to be really, really specific, or it's just this very generic type of output. It helps with that, outsourcing that mental ping pong that we do all the time. And there are plenty of videos out there that can teach you how to use AI as a prompt. It can help you kind of unmess your messy thoughts. Say, I have this idea, but on how to maybe organize my pantry better. And this is what my pantry looks like right now. And this is what I want it to look like, but I'm really not sure, where to even begin. You can ask AI. But again, just be careful if it ends up making it too generic and not specific enough for you. It can also help you kind of when you might say, I'm feeling really fatigued by doing this particular task, this particular way. What might be a better way for me to do it, and how can I organize it into my day? It can also help you with your moods. You can tell it, I'm feeling really overwhelmed by this particular thing right now. And again, that sort of overlaps with burnout. These are all things that AI can be good for, but you have to really know how to use it. And it can also help make you feel better about yourself. Honestly, like if you put in, how can I get my best bang for my buck in the time that I have right now so that I can get the most done? And how's it going to make me feel? There's all prompts that you can Google, literally, how do I prompt AI? I'm not kidding. And then your next steps could be to start to use whatever prompts you use, whether it's a written list or something that AI has generated for you, to just start creating those lists in whatever form that you do, but break it really down into teeny tiny steps and put those steps on your calendar, and not just on a day, but literally at a time in your day. I tell people all the time, you can accomplish a lot in 15 minutes, but you have to put it on your calendar and make sure that you really follow through with it, because otherwise, what's the point? I do have, my calendar is crazy. I've got color coded different, for different types of tasks that works for me, but again, it doesn't always work for other people. And you should ask for support. Don't be afraid. Don't feel shame. Don't feel like somebody's going to judge you, whether it's me or a family member, but make sure that the person that you do ask is somebody that really will support you. I don't think that my daughter could argue that I wasn't willing to support her. I just don't think I was the best support for her at that time. Now I am, because we have a much better way of communicating with each other. But when she was younger, I had her in therapy because I couldn't figure out how to really help her. So, again, it comes down to knowing that there are resources out there to help you. Obviously, the Neurodiversity Chamber, there are a lot of people within the Neurodiversity Chamber. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a caseworker, but I'm just somebody who's had a lifetime of experience in trying to maintain and contain my life, and ended up pivoting that into a full-time business. So I feel very confident that, I am somebody who can be a Sherpa, take you up, that proverbial mountain, which, leads me to the next slide. You know, I want to carry the load for people, and anybody that you seek out for support should help you carry that load. They should never judge you. I want you to get to the top. I've done the journey many times. Again, this is your journey. If you you know, choose to take it on and want to take it on, but you have to know where to get support and when. And I can't stress that enough. One of the best places to start, if you don't already do this for yourself, create zones in your home that are very specific for where that space is. I just had this conversation with a family 2 days ago, and I don't think the wife is going to end up hiring me because I don't think she liked when I agreed with her husband and said that there should be one like safe space, one private space that the two of them have that has nothing to do with their children or their family. And the wife's like, "What do you mean? I want my kids to feel like they're welcome in any room." And I'm like, it's not that they aren't going to feel welcome in the home, but you and your husband are still entitled to have those safe spaces where you feel like you can work or you can rest or you can cook. And it's fine if you've got a toddler who likes banging on their pots and pans on the floor next to you while cooking, but the kitchen should not be where kids are doing crafts. You know, unless it's cooking crafts. I don't think that the bedroom, your bedroom should be any place, whether you have kids or not, for anything other than sleeping. I am guilty though of watching on my computer in the middle of the night because I don't sleep. But you know, I know that I have a certain cutoff time, and I set an alarm to make sure that I'm cutting it off so that after, you know, I turn off my computer, I still give myself 15 or 20 minutes to just, you know, meditate or put on something that's meditative. We talked a little bit at the beginning. I don't know if any of you already have this, a drop zone where you know that's always where your keys, your wallet, your phone, your glasses, the very important things that you use every single day should be. And whether that's a little basket at your front door or a bag that you keep on a hook by your garage door, whatever that looks like for you, you should create that zone. And nobody else in your family or anybody else in your household should ever touch your little zone. Like if each member of your family needs to have a drop area, everybody then should have a little cubby or a little basket or a little bin or a hook, whatever it may be. If you work from home or you just like having a place where you can do bill paying or things like that, make sure that you've set that space up for yourself. And again, Adrian, you mentioned that you're okay with piles. I would never tell you that you have to get rid of your piles, but you have to know what your work zone system is going to be for you. You know, and there's, again, a lot of very creative ways that you can do it. I'm happy, and you know, you'll have the barcode or QR code at the end, and everybody can get my information. I'm happy to do a 30-minute free consult with anybody that's on this call. And if it goes beyond 30 minutes, that's fine too. If you want an in-person consult, usually I do have to charge for that. But yeah, make sure you're thinking about those zones. If you have a 19-year-old, those zones are going to look very different from a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old, right? Or even a baby. You know, I was in a house the other day that, you know, their zones are so intertwined. They have a baby, an 8-month-old, but their zones are so intertwined because it's such a small apartment. It's a very tiny 2-bedroom apartment, and the baby's room has to double as a place for the husband to have his closet as well as a desk. And that's asking a lot, even for a baby room, because the baby only needs the crib, right? But at some point it's going to turn into a toddler with a toddler bed, and they're going to be moving around, and they have to start thinking about that. And I think that the wife was, again, like, what do you mean? Like, why can't we have things in every single room for the baby? You can, but that's where chaos ensues usually. I mentioned a little bit before, there's this idea of cross-lateral movement or cross-crawling. And in adults, it's obviously going to look a little different than it does for kids, but it's the same concept that you know, we have to take these brain breaks from any of our organizing. So when you're creating any of your work zones, make sure that you're, you know, where you're going to do that little brain break as well. And that may be your I'm sorry, your relax zone area. I have a yoga mat in my office where I work from at home whenever I'm at home. And so when I take my little brain breaks, I get down on my yoga mat and I do some yoga exercises. And as far as last words, and it's not last words because I know we've still got more time, you know, just remember, none of us are failing at life, even though society likes to make us feel less than worthy because we may not be the most organized people on the planet. But we should be constantly learning and adapting how our brain works and how we can set ourselves up for that version of organized success. And disorganization does not define our worth. Don't let anybody ever tell you that it does, and that our spaces really can support us. So, you know, with that said, I would really ask in the next 20, you know, 15 or 20 minutes, please just let's ask whatever specific questions, because you never know if somebody else is thinking about that, but they haven't really, you know, like formulated it into a question and it could help them. So, questions, anybody?
I'll pop up with a question right away. So,
Yeah.
how do you start from, you mentioned before, when you get overwhelmed or paralyzed? How do you start?
I think that you have to just put it on your calendar, and that in and of itself is usually a little bit of mental preparation. I did have a client the other day that texted me the night before and said, I'm not ready. And I said, why do you think that? And she's like, well, because I've got laundry everywhere and dishes everywhere. And I said, okay, that's physical not readiness, and that's part of why I'm coming. Mentally, you just have to breathe. Just and I know it sounds so simple, but it really is that you have to breathe into it and recognize that, yeah, it's not going to be fun, but once you start, you tackle what I refer to as the low hanging fruit, the things that you know you can quickly and easily identify and do without overthinking it. So if putting away the, you know, if emptying the dishwasher is a no-brainer for you, empty the dishwasher, but schedule it on your calendar if you'll forget to do it, and make that, you know, you can make that a brain break from work. It may not feel like a brain break, but for me it is, because I'm moving, and anything, and Adrian, you know me, I move constantly, right? Like I don't stop moving. You know, I went right from a client yesterday right to Red Rocks and dancing all night, but that's me, and I would never impose that on anybody else. But I can walk into a room and quickly and easily identify the low hanging fruit for people. And so even doing a virtual consult in 30 minutes, I could probably scan a space and go, well, that's where I would start. And once you start thinking like the low hanging fruit, I think that it becomes more of a habit, like making your bed every day. This guy, you know, the most important lesson he learned in the Army was the first day, make your bed, because it does fire off your endorphins to set yourself up for success for the day. And you can go, you may not think that, but there is science behind it, that your subconscious is going back to 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning when you made your bed, and it will carry you forward into the day. It really does, I think, work that way. I get so excited when I check something off my list. So even if it's brushing my teeth, like if I'm in the bathroom and I have to remember to do something before I leave the house, if I can cross it off, it really, really excites me. And it should excite you. Like, I know some adult tasks are really boring, but again, once we create that habit, it doesn't feel like a chore anymore. It just feels like something that we know we have to do. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Other questions? I know for like a 19-year-old, they're still kind of dealing with a little bit of rebellion and they don't want their parents telling them what to do. Amy, what are some of the, it's a son, right?
Daughter.
daughter? Okay. Does she still get triggered if you say to her, do this or do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's one thing that I'm working on to try and overcome is to, she calls it, I don't know what she calls it, nagging and things like that. But the main thing with her is, her room. We're trying to get her to her room. It looks like I don't even know the word for it, but it looks like a tornado came through. Um,
So it hurts
and
you,
sh
but does it hurt her? Does she feel debilitated by it?
she does a little bit because she can't find things and um, she can't move around her room even comfortably.
Okay. And have you ever asked her what she thinks her version of organized success would look like?
I have not, and that's,
I think that's
I'm
a
getting
really good
there.
question.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the question I would ask her. What does she think organized success looks like for her? Does it look like something off of a Pinterest pin? Because, that's again where she's probably thinking you're going to want her to look perfect when nobody is. I mean, I just said something to somebody the other day, Martha Stewart, she wanted to project this image of perfection, but yet she landed in jail. So how perfect was she, right? I'm just saying, none of us are perfect. And she might think that you're judging her, even though I know you're not. And so you have to reassure her that you're not, that you're there to support her, and that you want to know what she thinks she could do to create more success for herself in the future.
Yeah. And at this point, I think it's really a matter of it being unhygienic, because
Right, right. And
she
that
has
was
trash
always
and
right.
food and
That was my line with my daughter. I said, I don't care what you
yep.
do in this room unless I start to see things growing from underneath the door like Little Shop of Horrors
Hmm.
or there's smells or whatever science projects growing in the corners. My daughter decided to move out of her father's house. We had a 1 week on 1 week off arrangement when we got divorced, and in her senior year in high school, um, I arrived home on a Sunday afternoon and my son said, I don't know if I should tell you to go in Jamie's room or not. And I'm like, how much worse could it possibly be? He's like, I think a lot worse. And I'm like, why? Like, you guys, like, what? You guys just got back here after being away for a week. She'd gotten really mad at her father the day before about something, and it triggered her. And she decided she was just going to move out without telling either one of us. And she dumped all of the contents from her father's house, from her room there, into the room that was already too full. And I looked at her and I said, all right, listen, I don't have to sleep in here, I don't have to live in here, but you do. So we have to figure this out. You cannot keep all this stuff here. This is where I'm drawing my line. Like we have to go through this stuff. And to her credit, she did. She did, because it was more important to her that she'd not live with her father, and they're fine now, whatever. But it just, living with him was just not good for her anymore. And I'm not saying your daughter should move out, but yeah,
Right.
you just need to and create a contract. You can create a contract. Any of us can create contracts with ourselves, because this is really what it is what is most important to us to accomplish on an hourly, a daily, a weekly, a monthly, a yearly, and a lifetime basis. At the end of our lives, a lot of people collect a lot of stuff, and what does it do for them, right? Like, we just have too much stuff in our lives, and that is ultimately the real problem. 300,000 items is a lot of items to consider having in the average household. But I again, that goes back to setting ourselves and our families up for success, but it has to be what their version of organized success is. My ex-husband and I came to an agreement that as long as I didn't have to see whatever spaces he needed, if I never had to go in them, I was fine with that. And that was the same rule more or less that I made with my daughter. If I don't have to go in there and deal with it, live like a slob. You're going to become somebody else's problem at some point if you ever live with somebody. But we still also want to be teaching them and setting them up for success.
Mhm.
So just like when you go to
Yeah.
therapy, write a contract with her and say, how can I help you? How can I support you? I don't think you necessarily have to bribe her at 19. But if there is something that you guys could do together on a more regular basis, or maybe you could say to her, let's go up to the mountains for a weekend if we can, finally get your room really, whatever it is that she might enjoy doing with you. And I would say the same thing for myself. I work really hard. I accomplish all my tasks so that I can hire somebody to come in once a month and clean my space because I don't want to do it. I can do it, but I don't want to. I work too hard so I can play hard. And
Yeah,
you should want
those are
that
all,
too.
that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did have a question though. She kind of has a mindset of it's all or none. So like the micro tasks, I've tried to get her to do that before and she resists and I don't know how to get around that. She's like, I can't do just little stuff. I have to do it all. And I said, there's no way to get it done all in one day.
Yeah. Did you ever read the book If You Give a Moose a Muffin or If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? It's all
Yeah.
about distraction. I don't know if anybody picked up on that when they were reading it to their kids, but it's all about like how we move from one thing to the next, but do we ever really end up accomplishing anything when we do it that way? You have to be really careful. So if she wants to try and attack everything at once, that's fine, but she can't leave the space where or she shouldn't want to leave the space where she is until it's been accomplished. And you can take like what I used to do with my daughter, we'd have bins lined up right outside the room so that we could sort the items that didn't no longer served her in the room, whether we were donating it or it needed to, like the number of dishes we would find in her room was ridiculous. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I had to go in her room to get dishes and forks and cups when she was younger. And then, I made her start, paying me actually. I'm like, every time I'm missing something from the kitchen, I'm gonna, charge you for it. Sometimes she cared about it, sometimes she didn't. But it was what I had to do to make her understand how important this was to me. She was impacting me. When she didn't impact me, I didn't care. So if it impacts you, you have to make her aware that this impacts our entire house by you doing it this way. Maybe she'll listen, maybe she won't. So, Mildred, did you have a question?
No, I was just laughing because I make my son pay me in either time or dollars if I have to pick up some of his stuff.
And I think that's fair. I really do. I think that, they get to a certain age. My kids, as much as I hated Bernie, we played the cleanup song every night. Every night that song came on when it was time to do the little bit of cleanup that I wanted to teach them. And I wasn't being a taskmaster with them when they were 3 or 4 or 5 years old, but I was just trying to model for them good behavior. That's all. That's really all that it was about. It's hard with kids, especially if we're very different, if we have very different mindsets. So, any other questions? No? You guys have been really quiet, which is fine. I hope that means that you were focused and that you did get something out of it. But I know it's really hard in these settings to really feel like I addressed a specific thing that helps you. So please, please, please reach out. I'm happy to do a virtual consult with you. And if you do need me to come in person, as long as I can manage it within the Boulder area. Once it's outside of Boulder, it's harder for me to do in-person consults. So, Leslie, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to see if you could maybe touch on like mine's is like paper. So like what do you do with your paper